Welcome back to the shop and to the channel. Well, I am inching closer to getting the DRO all set up on the KNT. I've already got the table and the knee scales mounted, as you probably saw, or at least I hope you saw in the previous videos on putting together this DIY open source DRO project. Well, I don't have enough of this particular material, but this is what I want to do. Build some standoffs that will attach to these T-slots that are used for the stop blocks for the power feed on the knee. And then figure out some way to mount the scales to the standoffs. So this is what I came up with for a design on the standoffs. They're going to be about 2 1/4 inches long. I actually end up making them a little bit longer with a notch in one end that will fit snugly into that T-slot. I'll recess a countersunk hole here for a socket head cap screw to mount it to these T-nuts that will be in the T-slot. Well, I bought this piece of cold rolled 1018 off of eBay just so I can minimize the amount of machining I need to do. I'm going to cut about a 5-inch section off here on the bandsaw and then take it over to the Bridgeport and machine it to size. That way at least both of the pieces that I make out of this will be the same dimension. I haven't used my homemade fly cutter in quite a while, so I figure I'll go ahead and use it for this task. The only downside of the fly cutter is that you can't take too heavy of a cut, but of course the upside is you get a really good finish if you have all the speeds and feeds dialed in correctly. I'm going to use some anchor lube here as a cutting fluid. I like it better than oil. Oil does work. Works well, but the anchor lube, you don't get that smoke stink, although you do have to clean this up when you're done because anchor lube is water based, and if you leave it sitting on your untreated surfaces for too long, it dries out, gets a little pasty, so you do have to remember to clean it up at least within a reasonable amount of time after using it. Well, I think I took too heavy of a depth of cut there. I've got some uneven tool marks, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to let it go. I'll do the other side and bring you back when I'm ready to do the width. Well, I took a lighter depth of cut on this side and certainly came out looking a lot nicer. The finish is a lot more even. I have some shorter parallels in the vise now, so I can set this up and start machining this down to the right width. I have a nice big 4-flute end mill in the spindle, and we'll start by taking like a 50 thousandths depth of cut. Well, it was a nice sharp end mill. It's not anymore. I must have seriously miscalculated my feeds and speeds, because this cold rolled 1018 should have been no problem for this end mill. Well, someday I'm going to get my tool and cutter grinder set up to sharpen these kinds of things. So hopefully at some point in the future we'll be able to use this again. I don't have much of a choice but to swap this out with a different end mill. We'll try something a little smaller, and we'll just take lighter cuts and multiple passes. Well, that end mill worked fine, but I have like 200 thousandths that I still need to take off of the other side. So I think what I'm going to do is take this out and switch to a roughing end mill, in which I can take heavier depth of cut. I've had pretty good luck with one of these, I guess they call them corncob end mills. I can take some pretty heavy depths of cut with it. So we'll get this piece of material switched over, get the vise cleaned up, and we'll take some more material off the end. My target is 1.5 inches, and I'm about 200 thousandths too wide. And although I'm not going to ruin this end mill, this is what happens when you forget to use the quill lock. Well, somehow I managed to actually finish machining this thing to the right width. Took off about 200 thousandths, and now we're at about 1.5 inches wide, which is what I needed to be at. I'll take this over to the bandsaw, we'll cut it in half, and we'll start machining each of the individual standoffs to size. To machine these now to length, I'll start by machining off the end of each one just to get it square with the rest of the part. With one side now square to the part, I'll flip it over so I can start machining this thing down to the correct length, which will be about 2¼ inches. I am actually going to disregard that dimension, and I'm just going to clean this up. I'd rather have the standoff be a little bit too long than a little bit too short. Since I have the extra material on these, I think I'm going to make them 2.5 inches long. So I did put my vise stop here on the end. I'll take a measurement here so I can punch that into the DRO. We'll machine this down to 2.5 inches. And with the vise stop in there now, I should be able to finish machining this one and then put the other part in and machine it to the same spot without having to reset the DRO. Well, hopefully you can see that, but we hit our target right on 2.5 inches. So I'll take this part out and we'll put the other one in and machine it to exactly the same length. Looks like I got about a 0.5 thousandths over. I'm not going to worry about trying to take that off, so we're going to call this good. Both of these are now machined to the exact same size, or at least within a 0.5 thousandths. And now I want to machine the holes in it. There's going to be one hole down the center, which will attach the standoff, and then two other mounting holes that will be used to mount an aluminum plate that will go between the standoffs in which the scale will be mounted. I have the first piece mounted up in the vise. I did square it up with a machinist square. I'm just going to use the edge finder now to find the center of this piece. I'll start by drilling and machining the clearance hole for a socket head cap screw that will go all the way through the standoff and into a T-nut in the slot on the side of the K&T. So to get started, I'm going to use a 1/4 inch spotting drill. It's got a 120 degree tip on it. Makes it easier for a standard 118 degree drill to get started and find a center. I'll follow up now with a 1/4 inch drill. This should be exactly long enough to fit through this entire part. I don't have any of those pilot drills that are used generally to drill these recesses for a socket head cap screw, so instead I'm going to use this 4-flute end mill. I'm going to plunge mill this, so to make sure I don't go too deep, I'm just going to adjust the quick nut here and use the head of the socket head cap screw as a spacer between it and the quill stop knob. Well, after trying to test fit this is when I remembered two things. Number one, a 1/4 inch hole is not the clearance hole for a 1/4 inch screw. And I made this 250 thousandths taller than what was in my drawing and what the screw was made for. So I need to recess this head a little bit further, and I need to drill a larger clearance hole. So I'll switch out for a letter G drill that should give me the right clearance, and we'll go another 250 thousandths deeper for the socket head recess. Well, now that that's fitting correctly, I'll remove the end mill. I'll put the drill chuck back in because I need to drill and tap 2 mounting holes for 1024 countersunk screws that will hold an aluminum plate that goes between the 2 standoffs. And that's what I'll end up mounting the vertical scale to. Well, so far so good. I've got the mounting holes all drilled and tapped. The next thing I need to do is machine a keyway, or a key rather, in the bottom of each of these standoffs that will fit snugly in the keyway that's on the side of the K&T. And that keyway is about 438 thousandths wide, and I want it to be right in the center of these standoffs. I again have this back over in the vise, this time inverted from its previous orientation so I can cut that key. I am using the vise stop again. I'm going to use the DRO, but rather than moving the end mill from side to side, I'm going to remove the part and turn it each time. I think this hopefully will give me a better chance that this keyway is centered in the part. Is it critical that it is? If it's off by 5 or 10 thousandths, it's not going to matter. But I don't know. This feels more right than the other way. I think I'm at dimension, so I want to deburr this and we'll try it over on the mill. I deburred the part with a file and it looks like it fits in here pretty good. It's a little bit looser than what I was hoping for. I was hoping for a little tighter fit, but it will be more than adequate for what it needs to do. For the standoff here at the top, I did have to notch it a little bit to get it around the cover for the transmission. I had to do something similar for the standoff on the bottom. With the standoffs now complete, I need to turn my attention to making a couple of T-nuts. Again, I want to make these two at least a relatively tight tolerance. I'm using a piece of the same material that I used to make the standoffs. There's nothing really special about these, so I'll machine these off camera and bring you back when I'm finished. I have the T-nuts all finished. I did make one mistake though. I apparently forgot how to do math and didn't move the DRO over the extra 50 thousandths I needed, which would be half of the 700. So this hole in the middle is not quite in the middle, but that's okay. It'll be fine. I have all of the machining done, so the only thing left to do is to mount these in the machine. And I think this becomes a little bit more obvious as to how this is going to work. But I made these standoffs nice and tight to the machine. They should be plenty rigid to hold that scale. I'm really happy with how these turned out. Well, the next thing I need to do is to machine up the mounting plate for the scale. It's going to be a little bit longer than what the distance is between the standoffs, which is why I made them the way that I did. I'll also need to machine the brackets. I need to hold the reader head to the bracket that's attached to the knee. But that is going to have to wait for another video. I just kind of run out of time. It actually took me a lot longer to make these standoffs than I would have expected. Well, I do appreciate those thumbs up, and I appreciate the comments even more. Let me know what you think, what I did right, what I do wrong. If you're not a subscriber, consider hitting that subscribe button and the bell icon so you can see how the rest of this turns out. I have big plans for this DRO. I think you're going to like what you see. And thanks again for all those that support the channel on Patreon or through PayPal. It really does mean a lot. It really makes it possible for me to be able to come out here and spend some time filming and recording and getting the materials I need to put this stuff together. It really means a lot that you are willing to do that for me. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.